All right, we're 2-0 in our last two board member tier package bets on brockpage.com. And the link for today's board member tier package bet is in the description section below. And just remember, guys, if you sign up for my board member tier here today, you're actually going to get access to every package that I offer on that website every single day, all the way until the end of March. Our board member tier is our all-inclusive membership. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll explain a little bit more about it in just a moment. But before we go ahead and move on, just want to take a quick time out and welcome you to the video. My name is Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. I also sell my personal bets on brockpage.com, and we have packages on that website starting at just $1.99. Now, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. And what I do on brockpage.com is I'll actually share with you which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally. Now, we currently have over 860 members who are signed up and active on my webpage right now. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. We're going to start with the Celtics taking on the Hornets. That's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time on Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. Boston's minus 7.5, totals 227. And although this is a pretty big number on the road, the Celtics are starting to really hit their stride here. They've been playing some really good basketball over the past month or so. They're actually 16-3 straight up in their last 19 ball games. And they're currently leading the NBA in fewest points allowed per contest on the road. Now, in addition to that, the Celtics are also the league leaders in defensive field goal percentage as well. When it comes to the scoring in this one, Jason Tatum's averaging over 26.5 points per contest, along with 8 rebounds and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Jaylen Brown scoring over 23 points a game himself, along with 6 boards and 3 assists as well. And speaking of offensive play, the Celtics lead the NBA in shooting from the stripe on the road. They're also in the top 3 in offensive rebounding. They're taking on a Charlotte team who simply just gives up way too many points. They're in the bottom 3 in the league in points allowed per contest. And they're also dead last in the NBA in defensive boards at home. Now, when it comes to covering the number, the Hornets failed to cover in 6 out of their last 9 ball games. When it comes to the injury report in this one, Hayward is out, Bouknight is questionable. Meanwhile, for Boston on the other side, Nesmith is out for them. When it comes to the total, Boston went 7-1 to the over in their last 8 ball games. Overs against the likes of Brooklyn, Memphis, and Indiana. Meanwhile, Charlotte went 60% to the over in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Boston, minus 7.5, and the over 227. Next contest, it is going to be Bulls versus the Pistons, 7 p.m. Eastern start time. Chicago's minus 6, totals 226.5. And despite how bad Chicago's been playing, they've been absolutely dominant over Detroit in recent meetings. Matter of fact, Chicago won their last 10 straight against Detroit, and they successfully covered the number in all 10 of those victories. Now, the Bulls' biggest strength against Detroit has been their defensive play. They're holding the Pistons to just 94 points a game during that 10-game stretch I just mentioned. Meanwhile, offensively, well, really tough to stop these guys. Chicago's leading the NBA in shooting from the field. They're also in the top 3 in shooting from 3 land. Zach LaVine is drilling 40% of his long balls, and he's also averaging over 24.5 points a game. Meanwhile, DeMar DeRozan, he's scoring 28 points a night himself, along with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. They're taking on a Detroit team who scores only 103 points a game. They find themselves dead last in shooting from the field at home. Meanwhile, defensively on the other end of the court, the Pistons are dead last in the association in guarding the 3 ball. Now, injury-wise, Diallo and Hayes are questionable. Jackson and Stewart are still out. Meanwhile, for Chicago, Vucevic is questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, 8 out of these teams' last 10 meetings did fall under the posted number. The Bulls are also 7-2 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, the Pistons saw their last 3 straight fall under the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean towards Chicago -6 and the under 226.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Suns versus the Heat, 7:30 p.m. East. Miami's -7.5, totals 218. But as good as the Heat's been here recently, they do tend to throttle down offensively late in games. These guys are currently in the bottom half of the league in fourth quarter scoring. They also failed to cover the point spread recently against the likes of San Antonio, Charlotte, and Dallas. They're taking on a Phoenix team who covers in 60% of their road games. And they also have an .800 win percentage when traveling this year. Devin Booker scoring over 25.5 points a game, along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. Meanwhile, big DeAndre Ayton, he's scoring over 16.5 points a game himself, along with double-digit boards. And speaking of rebounds, the Suns are in the top 10 in the NBA in offensive boards per contest. They're also in the top 3 in shooting the basketball from the field. Now, injury-wise, Johnson is questionable for Phoenix. Martin's questionable for Miami. When it comes to the total in this one, Miami saw 5 out of their last 9 fall under the line. Meanwhile, Phoenix saw unders recently against the likes of Orlando, Portland, and New Orleans. I'm going to lean toward Phoenix, +7.5, and the under 218. Next contest, it is going to be Lakers versus the Rockets, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. LA's -4.5, totals 233. And even though LeBron's banged up right now, well, the Rockets have a slew of guys who may not play themselves, and that includes leading scorer Christian Wood. He's questionable with some kind of illness. Schroeder, Matthews, and Tate, they're also listed as questionable. Garuba is out. Now, the Rockets really don't even seem like they're trying. They got the W just 2 times since January 19th. They also lost their last 10 straight against the Lakers, and they allow more points per contest than any other team in the NBA. They're taking on a Laker team who covered recently against the likes of Golden State and Utah despite their recent struggles. And even though LeBron may be sitting this one out here today, Russell Westbrook's still averaging over 18 points a game along with 7 boards, 7 assists. Carmelo Anthony's also been pretty good shooting from long distance this year, 13 points a night as well for Melo. Now, injury-wise, once again, LeBron is questionable. Davis is still out. Meanwhile, for Houston, leading scorer Christian Wood, he's questionable, once again with an illness. Schroeder, Matthews, and Tate, they are also listed as questionable. I already said that, but I figured I'd let you know again. Now, total-wise, Houston's gone 60% to the over in the Toyota Center this season. They also saw overs more recently against the likes of Miami, Utah, and Phoenix. Meanwhile, the Lakers saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the line themselves. And they averaged 117 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Houston. I'm going to lean toward the Lakers -4.5 and the over 233. Next matchup, it is going to be Hawks versus the Bucks, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Milwaukee's -5 at home with the total at 238.5. Now, the Red Hot Bucks have won their last 5 straight, and they're also 23-12 straight up in the Fiserv Forum. Giannis Antetokounmpo scoring nearly 30 points a game, along with 11.5 boards. Meanwhile, Chris Middleton scoring over 20 points a night himself, along with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. And speaking of rebounds, the Bucks are currently in the top 3 in the NBA in offensive boards per contest. They're also leading the NBA in offensive points per game. And now they're taking on an Atlanta team who couldn't stop I don't know, but they can't stop anything. Atlanta's in the bottom 10 in defensive field goal percentage, and they're doing a pretty bad job in guarding the three-pointer. Now, when it comes to road games, the Hawks got the W in just 12 out of 32 contests away from home, and they covered in only 31% of those games. Injury-wise, Herter's questionable for the Hawks. Hill and Allen questionable for Milwaukee. Now, Lopez and Connaughton, they're also still out for the Bucks. When it comes to the number, Milwaukee went 80% to the over in their last 10 outings. Atlanta saw 5 out of their last 8 get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Milwaukee Bucks -5 in the over 238.5. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Magic versus the Pelicans, 8 o'clock East. New Orleans is -8.5, totals 222. As bad as the Pelicans have been this year, they have gotten the W in 4 out of their last 6 ball games. And they also have a winning record against the point spread at the Smoothie King Center. CJ McCollum's averaging over 26.5 points a game with his new team. 5 rebounds, 6.5 assists for CJ. Meanwhile, big man Jonas Valanciunas, he's getting 17 points a game himself, along with nearly a dozen boards. And speaking of rebounding, the Pelicans are amongst the best rebounding teams in the NBA right now. They're also in the top 10 in offensive boards, top 3 in defensive rebounds as well. They're taking on a Magic team who got the W in just 9 out of 36 road games, and they really just don't score a whole lot of points. The Magic average is only 103 points a game, and they're currently in the bottom 3 in shooting from the field. They're also going to work once again without the efforts of Markelle Fultz and possibly Suggs. Meanwhile, for New Orleans on the other side, Brandon Ingram's got a tender hammy. That thing can snap at any moment. Now, total-wise, New Orleans saw unders recently with Utah, Sacramento, and the Lakers. Meanwhile, Orlando saw their last 3 straight fall under the line themselves. 5-1 of the under in their last 6. I'm going to lean toward New Orleans -8.5 in the under 222. Next game, it is going to be Thunder versus the T-Wolves, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Minnesota's -14.5 with the total at 230. Now, Minnesota won their last 5 straight, and they also went 8-2 against the spread in their last 10. Now, when it comes to offensive play, these guys are in the top 3 in scoring, top 5 in offensive boards at home. Karl-Anthony Towns is scoring over 24.5 points per contest, along with 9 rebounds and 3 assists. Now, the big man's also drilling nearly 41% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Malik Beasley, he's scoring over a dozen points a game himself, along with a couple of boards. When it comes to defensive play, it's actually been real tough to get to the basket in Minnesota this year. These guys are in the top 3 in defensive field goal percentage at home. They're also limiting their competition to just 33% shooting from beyond the arc in the target center. Now, they're taking on a Thunder team who lost their last 3 straight, and they score fewer points per game than any other team in the NBA. OKC averages just 102 points a night, and they're also dead last in shooting from the field. Now, even worse than that, OKC makes only 30% of their three-pointers when they travel. When it comes to the injury report, Favors, Williams, and Mann are questionable. Robinson, Earl, and Giddey are still out indefinitely. Meanwhile, for Minnesota on the other side, Beverly, Russell, Prince, Vanderbilt, and Edwards are questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, Minnesota saw unders recently with the likes of Portland and Memphis and Toronto. Meanwhile, OKC's 18-14 to the under when they travel. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Minnesota -14.5 and the under 230. Next contest, Raptors, Spurs, 8:30 p.m. East. Toronto is -1.5 on the road with the total at 229. And even though the Raptors are favored on the road here, they did lose their last 3 straight, and they got the W only 3 times since February 10th. Now, the Raptors are going to work here today without OG Anunoby and Johnson. Meanwhile, Freddie VanVleet, he's also questionable with a knee issue. And I'll tell you what, that's certainly bad news for Toronto, because these guys have already struggled to shooting the basketball when they're mostly healthy. Toronto is currently in the bottom 5 in offensive field goal percentage, and they also struggle shooting from the stripe on the road. Meanwhile, defensively, the Raptors have had some issues grabbing rebounds. These guys are currently in the bottom 10 in road defensive boards. They're taking on a Spurs team who has little issue getting to the basket. They're in the top 10 in scoring, top 5 in shooting from the field. DeJounte Murray averages 20.5 points a night, along with 8 boards and 9 assists. Meanwhile, Keldon Johnson, he's making nearly 42% of his shots from three land, 15 points a night for him. And when it comes to the injury report, Langford's out, Bates Diop is questionable. And when it comes to the total, San Antonio's 20 and 11 to the over in the AT&T Center. That's good for 65% in that category. They also saw overs more recently against the likes of Charlotte, Miami, and Washington. Meanwhile, Toronto saw 6 out of their last 10 meetings with San Antonio get over the line. Give me the Spurs plus 1.5 and the over 229. Next contest, it is going to be Knicks versus the Mavericks, 8:30 p.m. East. Dallas is -8, totals 215. Now, the red-hot Mavericks have won their last 5 straight, and they also went 8-2 against the spread in their last 10. Dallas is also playing very good in the American Airlines Center. They're 23 and 11 straight up at home this season, and they're allowing only 102 points per contest in that building. Now, no surprise here, the Mavs lead the NBA in guarding the 3-ball on their home court. When it comes to the scoring, Luka Doncic is averaging 28 points a game, along with 9 rebounds and 8 assists. Meanwhile, Dorian Finney-Smith is scoring double-digit points a game himself, along with 4 boards. They're taking on a Knicks team who failed to cover in 6 out of their last 9, and they've recorded only 3 wins since January 31st. Now, New York's biggest issue is their offensive performance. They're currently averaging only 105 points a game. When it comes to the injury report, Noel, Reddish, Toppin, and Grimes are out. Robinson's questionable. Meanwhile, for Dallas, Chris and Ntilikina are out for them. Brunson is also questionable. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, Dallas saw 5 out of their last 9 fall under the line. They're also a staggering 25 and 9 to the under at home, and that's good for 74% in that particular category. Meanwhile, the Knicks saw unders recently with the Clippers and Portland. They're also 8-2 to the under in their last 10 against Dallas. I'm going to lean toward the Mavericks -8 and the under 215. Next matchup, it is going to be Blazers versus the Jazz, 10 p.m. Eastern start time. Utah is -17, totals 222. And as absurd as this number is, I actually think it's a number the Jazz should be able to cover. They're already 22 and 10 straight up in Salt Lake City this year, and they're amongst the best scoring teams at home in the league. They're actually in the top 3 in home scoring, top 5 in offensive rebounding. Donovan Mitchell is averaging over 25.5 points per contest, along with 4 rebounds and 5 assists. Bojan Bogdanovic, he's averaging 17 points a game, along with 4 rebounds. And when it comes to defensive play, it's been very tough to score against Utah in their own building. They're in the top 10 in fewest home points allowed. And they're also amongst the best in the NBA in home defensive boards. They're taking on a Portland team who lost their last 5 straight, and they've yet to reach double-digit road victories this year. Now, the Blazers' biggest issue is their defensive play, although offensively, they've actually been pretty irrelevant recently as well. The Blazers are scoring just 104 points a game when they travel, and they're in the bottom 10 in offensive boards. Meanwhile, defensively, Portland's in the bottom 3 in defensive field goal percentage, and they're allowing nearly 115 points a game on the road. Now, injury-wise, Bledsoe and Winslow are out. Simons is questionable. When it comes to the total in this one, Portland saw overs recently with Golden State, Memphis, and Milwaukee. Now, they also allowed over 114 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Utah. Meanwhile, the Jazz, on the other side of things, they saw overs recently with Houston, Phoenix, and Dallas. I'm going to lean toward Utah, -17, and the over 222. Next contest, it is going to be Nuggets versus the Kings, 10 p.m. Eastern start time. Denver's -4, totals 239.5. Now, Denver's another team who's red hot right now. They actually lost just 2 games since February 4th, and they actually posted a record of 11-2 straight up during that span. Now, the Nuggets are doing a superb job on the defensive end of the court while traveling. They're currently in the top 5 in road defensive boards, and they're limiting their opponents to just 32% shooting from 3 land in their away games. When it comes to offensive production, Nikola Jokic is averaging over 25.5 points a game, along with 13 rebounds and 8 assists. Meanwhile, Aaron Gordon scoring over 14.5 points a game himself, along with 5 rebounds and a couple assists. Now, when it comes to offensive production, Denver's actually in the top 3 in the association in shooting from the field. They're taking on a Sacramento team who lost 7 out of their last 9, and they're allowing just way too many points per game. Now, the Kings are allowing nearly 116 points per contest, and they're letting their opponents make 48% of their field goals against them. When it comes to the injury report, Lamb and Harkless are questionable. Holmes is out. Meanwhile, for Denver on the other side, Barton and Highland are questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, Denver went 6-3 to the over in their last 9 ball games. They also went 70% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Sacramento. Meanwhile, the Kings on the other side of things, they went 60% to the over in their last 10 outings themselves. And in addition to that, they're also allowing over 115 points a game in their last 10 meetings with the Nuggets. I'm going to lean toward Denver -4 and the over 239.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Wizards versus the Clippers, 10:30 p.m. East. The LA Clippers are -4, totals 217. And even though the Clippers lost their last 2 straight, they did still win 7 out of their last 10, and they play some incredibly tough defense. As a matter of fact, LA's in the top 10 in points allowed per contest, top 10 in defensive field goal percentage. Now, scoring-wise, Reggie Jackson's averaging over 16.5 points a game, along with 4 rebounds and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Marcus Morris is scoring 15.5 points a game himself. He's also shooting nearly 40% from 3-land. And speaking of shooting the 3 ball, the Clippers are currently in the top 5 in shooting from beyond the arc at home. They're taking on a Washington team who's actually had a pretty tough time getting to the basket this season. They're averaging only 104 points a game on the road, and they're also in the bottom 10 in offensive boards. Now, when it comes to shooting the 3 ball, they're also amongst the worst in the East in that particular category as well. When it comes to the injury report, Carey is out for Washington, Covington's doubtful for Los Angeles. Now, Norman Powell, he's also sitting this one out with that toe injury. When it comes to the total in this one, the Clippers saw 5 out of their last 6 fall under the line, 70% to the under in their last 10. Meanwhile, Washington saw unders recently with Cleveland and Indiana. They're also 17-12 to the under on the road. I'm going to lean toward the LA Clippers -4 and the under 217. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. If you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on brockpage.com, you're going to get access to that content all the way through the end of March. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And guys, if you want to get access to every single pick, every single bet that I give out on that website, you're going to want to think about signing up for my board member tier package. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.